Welcome to A Wealthy Life, the podcast where I explore mindset, strategies, and practical tools that you need to create a wealthy life, a life of abundance, something of your choosing. So last week, and maybe I should start with, I hope you had a nice Christmas. Last week, I set you off rethinking really your relationship with your mind. I asked you to reframe your thoughts, to rethink your roles and responsibility in life, and to actually start practicing with the way that you're thinking so that you're in control of your thoughts. And the reason for doing that is that I knew, obviously, because this is all very cleverly planned, that I was going to do a financial compilation podcast this week. So the same pattern, I'm going to narrate you through the key areas that I want you to be thinking about, and I will highlight podcasts that you can go on and listen to. In a sense, we're going to be laying the foundations to enable you to really rethink your relationship with money, to shift from just being in a survival mode or survival thinking, which is what most people are in, to be honest, to a position where instead of thinking of it as, well, I've only just got enough, to recognize that having enough is actually having a huge amount. It puts you in the 1%, probably the 1% of the 1%. You're not that far away from financial freedom. It is something that you can achieve with the combination of the work from last week, starting to take control of your thoughts, and the skills and the tips that I'm going to take you here, if you like, the education around financial resilience and the mind shifts that you're going to need here around finance to help you break free of some of the traps that want to keep you in that cycle of work for life. You are going to be able to achieve the life that you want. This is why you need to listen to this episode of Redefining Enough and Mastering Your Money Maths. If you've ever felt like money controls you, instead of you controlling money, I'm going to show you how you can flip that script and take back your control so that you make the choices about what role money plays in your life. We're going to look at what ambushes there are conjured up by brilliant marketeers waiting to trap you and trap your money, and this idea of unconscious consumerism, combined with a lack of financial education, to be honest with you, that leave you in a position where no matter how hard you work, you do not feel that you are in a position of financial resilience or financial security. And I'm going to teach you about money maths in a way that school never did. Simple concepts that will enable you to rethink your relationship with money, to make smarter decisions about your money, and then maybe to go one step even further and make your money work harder for you so you don't have to. And it's going to be more than a conversation just on budgeting and saving. It's absolutely not about budgeting and saving. It's about unlocking the way that you think about money so that you can actually change your relationship with money. Remember what I was saying last week about your thoughts are what shape the world you see, and actually you can control your thoughts. And whether you're someone who wants to build a buffer, or whether you're someone who feels a bit stuck and wants to move forward, or whether you feel that you're in a strong position now and you want to be able to make your money work harder, this episode is going to give you the tools, the insight, and the inspiration to make that shift. So strap in and let's get going on this week's episode. I know I keep saying this, but crikey, that's another year done, gone. It's the 26th of December. We're into leftover turkeys. Well, unless you're a vegetarian, of course, we don't have leftover turkey in this house. But it's interesting, isn't it? I can remember when there was a time when food that my children and I ate was all around leftovers, out of date food even. And I used to go to the co-op at the end of our road and see what was reduced, and what was reduced that day, what was the food going in to be out of date and might have gone to waste, was what I bought and what I conjured our evening meal around. And I still find myself drawn to bargains around food. And I still have to fight that urge not to buy cheap food, not necessarily whether the food is reduced, but cheap food, pre-packaged food, because I know that it's important for my health, for our health, for all our health, to actually not have ultra processed food. And yet ultra processed food is the food that is the cheapest out there. And I'm fortunate, and I'm sure you're fortunate enough to be able to choose healthier food and recognize it, that actually that's a privilege in this day and age that some other people can't afford. And I think that's really a metaphor for what I want this podcast to be about. You have a choice about how you spend your money. You can, bit judgy here, but waste your money on things that aren't good for you, that do not support you to live the life you want. Or you can choose to make empowering decisions and spend your money on things or experiences or education or investments that are going to support you to live the life that you want. And I think that choice is between buying your ultra processed marketed stuff, not just food, but everything else that has been ultra marketed, versus making conscious decisions about your purchases. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever struggled, even just a little bit financially? Maybe you grew up in a family that always had plenty of money. So maybe it feels like it comes easily to you. But maybe you feel that money is a little bit more elusive. It's always just out of the edge of your reach. And maybe you came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, and maybe you have beliefs that you've set up around you're not worthy, or it'll never be possible for you. It's interesting, isn't it? Of course, there's going to be a rare few out there that see money for what it is. And when I say a rare few, it is a rare few of people that recognize that money is a tool that can be leveraged. And out of that leveraging, you can create financial security and freedom. And why do I say it's a rare few? Because you were never taught this at school. And unless you were born into a circle where your parents already knew this and they've passed this information on to you, it's like a secret. Shh, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody that money isn't just a currency that we pass between ourselves. Money is actually a tool that we can use to create the life that we want. Shocking. Shh, don't share that idea with anybody. Keep that a secret. Crazy, hey? So where do you sit? Do you feel like you have enough and you're happy about it? Marvelous. Do you feel like you have enough, but you are worried you might lose it? Or do you feel like you don't have enough and maybe you never will for whatever reason? Whatever your current thoughts, this episode is going to be around expanding your mindset around finances. We worked on controlling your mindset before. Now I want to expand it and build on last week's episodes and show you how you can apply them to your relationship with money. And of course, as part of that, I'm going to have to show you the pitfalls that the marketeers and societies now applying to money and how we spend it and control it to keep you trapped in work. And I'm going to explore these lessons so that at the end of this, you're going to feel really empowered to build your own financial resilience. So if you listened last week, you've been really pleased to know there are only 3 sections to this podcast. So I'm going to start off with what do you understand and believe about money? So sort of like to dig into those myths. Then we're going to look at what are the traps that are out there that can ambush you and keep you working for life. So how can you avoid, in effect, losing the money that you work so hard for? And then money maths, which is the pinnacle of it, what they haven't taught you at school and what you can learn about money for yourself so that you can turn it into that tool that you can use. So let's get right into this with what do you understand and believe about money? And there's a great word that says everything for me here. And I really came about it in my book, The Wealthy Retirement Plan. And the word is enough. Now, this is a word that we often associate with a negative sense. I haven't got enough. There isn't enough. It's always about lack, that word enough, isn't it? Have you got enough? We never really hear people saying, oh, wow, I've got more than enough. They don't sort of head in that direction, do they, with the sentences they create? I want to reframe the word enough as the concept of abundance. Enough means that you have what you need. And if you're listening to this podcast, I already know that you have enough because you have a roof over your head, you have clothes on your back, you have food in your stomach, and you have the technology to listen to this. And how can I say that? How can I make that judgment about you? Because you wouldn't spend money on the technology if you were starving. You wouldn't spend money on the technology to listen to this if you were cold and didn't have any clothes. And you wouldn't be able to charge your devices if you didn't have some sort of residence, some sort of home to be in. So I can make generally a judgment that you have enough. Now, is that shocking to you? Do you feel like you have enough? And what I want to do is shift your mindset to where I am. I want to get you thinking about you the way I think about you, from a feeling that you don't have enough and you may be focused on the gaps, and I spoke about that last week, to a position where you recognize that you do have enough. Maybe you have more than enough. Maybe you have much more than enough. But knowing that you have enough is the foundation to moving forward. And one of the easiest things to do and to prove this to you is for you to do the wealth tracker. And you know that you can find that in the resource section of the Wealthy Life community. My mindset really was inspired to this concept of enough through the travels. And I've been very fortunate, and it's my goal to travel all over the world, but it's to travel the world. And I've met people living with so much less than we have in the West. People who don't have shoes, walk around in bare feet all the time. Their clothes were full of holes. I remember taking my children to South Africa when they were 7 and 9, and the girls asking, why does that little boy have holes in his clothes? Because those clothes were his older sisters, his mums, his grandmas, and probably his uncles. They have homes in some places made out of scrap material. Again, particularly in South Africa, a pallet and some plastic could be your home. And yet, maybe not the people living in the pallet houses, but a lot of the people will smile when they see you. When they get a chance to work, they work hard. They are finding ways to move forward from where they're at. Now, if you take this into an NLP position, the people who do not have the fundamentals of a home will be working to better their lives because they want to get away from their pallet and scrap metal house. So something is pushing them away. We don't have that in the West. There are, yes, people who are homeless, who are living on our streets. There are people who beg for food because somehow they've fallen out of the safeguards that we have in the West. But we don't necessarily see, unless you've traveled widely, just how fortunate we are in the West to have this society that captures us when we fall. And when I started to travel, that experience helped me to see that I think really our beliefs around money are largely inherited from our parents. And through the filter that they give us, our experience of money. So, for example, my mum came from a reasonably wealthy family. Her father owned his own business. They had their own house, quite a big house. And she gave me the fear of losing money. She was always worried about not enough money. I think that's my interpretation of it. My father, who did have a wealthy family but lost everything during the war and was rebuilding his life, and his family were rebuilding their lives when he and my mum met, actually inspired me to take more risks. Now, whether that's to do with they had money and they lost money, or through his experience of being in the war versus my mum's, they had a different relationship with money and a different relationship with life. And it is that combination of stories and experiences that has created the, if you like, the foundation mindset that I started out with. But then my travels enabled me to see, there are different ways of thinking about money and our relationship with it. And this westernized pursuit of it, really to the detriment of everything else in our lives, is not the way that it has to be. So I want to give you some extra listening if you want to dive deeper into these concepts and really start challenging what are some potentially deep-rooted, maybe even erroneous beliefs that you hold around money. So episode 4 is going to talk about wealth versus rich, and that's really where this concept of enough comes into play. Episode 39 is going to talk to you about, what did your parents teach you? Are you all about budgeting, or are you about risk taking? And episode 40, to sort of take that further forward, and what do you want for your family? Do you want to pass on these erroneous concepts? Or do you want to be the start of a new thought chain that empowers your family, not just your children, but potentially your siblings, to recognize that money is this tool that we can use for a wealthy life, to enable us to recognize that we have enough? So if you're open to the idea of shifting your thinking and you're prepared to loosen up on these historical myths that you're bringing forward through your family stories, if you like, and family messages, let's stay in the past a little and go with the hard truth that school has failed you. They might have taught you history, they might have taught you science, they might have taught you how to spell, but they didn't teach you money maths, the kind of real world, practical financial skills that will help you navigate life, not just accounting. You might have taken an accounting course. I can't believe I took accounting at university and it still is like another language. It's ridiculous. What they taught you at school was algebra. Do you remember? X plus Y equals Z. I have to say that's the one piece of maths I loved. And for me, it's like the ultimate in problem solving, that concept that there are 2 bits that create a solution, or 3 bits that can create a solution. Loved X plus Y equals Z. But what the heck was cos, sin, and tan, and the hypotenuse of a triangle? That's trigonometry. I mean, I really didn't care about whether the triangle had a 45-degree angle or not. I don't know about you. And I remember my head exploding at that. And that's not the worst. If you're old enough, and I don't know if you are, do you remember the slide rule? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this was literally some ruler where you slid things up and down and it worked stuff out for you. And I think it was the forerunner of being able to use your mobile phone to do the maths for you. I really don't understand the purpose of a slide rule. And I tried Googling it and I couldn't find an answer. So I don't know whether you remember the slide rule or not, but any of you using a slide rule now? Any of you, unless you're a builder, using trigonometry now? You might be using algebra. You might be working things out in your life and using algebra going forward. But were you ever taught to calculate? Listen to this. Were you ever taught to calculate the cost of debt, to evaluate something that was on offer? So when the supermarkets say, or the shops say, bargain, you can buy this thing. You've got Black Friday sales, but you've also got just the weekly offers that are in the supermarkets. This thing, buy this thing, this is a bargain. Do you know how to calculate whether that's truly a good offer? If you're faced with 2 jars of something, one's a bigger jar, one's a smaller jar, can you work out which is the better offer? Some of you might be able to, but you were never taught it at school. Never. And that's because an educated consumer is harder to trap into a cycle of debt and working for life. Oh, that's a bit conspiratorial, isn't it? Maybe I should wind back from that, but it is what I think. I don't know that they did it deliberately in school. I'm not blaming the teachers, but I can't see why we weren't taught how to manage our money. I remember being at college, a little spell I did, with horrible spitty kids at college. And they used to spit at one another for some reason. And teaching them what a checkbook was and explaining to them the difference between a credit card and a debit card. And I brought all that material in from home. I decided to teach the children that because it was something that was really, I don't know, very, very prevalent in my life at the time. I was a single mum then with the kids being young, and I was having to master money in a way that I'd never had to before. And I wanted to share that straight away with these school, college kids. They were 16, 17-year-olds. I hadn't been taught that, and I bet you weren't either. So if we move beyond that, in this section, I want to give you, I think, probably 4 episodes that are going to shake you up a bit, that are going to help you move from being unconscious about money to being conscious about money. And the first one that will do that is episode 130. And I talk about why you'll never double your money. So there's an exercise I do where I talk about doubling your money. And this podcast, episode 130, is about how you'll never double your money. And it's because of unconscious consumerism, those traps trying to separate you from what you've worked so hard for to earn, what you've traded your time to earn. There are all these traps out there trying to take you away. And I take that on in episode 6, right back at the beginning, with buy now, pay later. The idea of this consumerism trap, encouraging you to buy stuff that you don't really need and you probably won't use. And I still fall into it occasionally and I go, what are you doing? And I have to pull myself back. So it's about being more conscious of it, not being perfect, not never buying anything, certainly not getting greedy or selfish or mean about anything. It's about an awareness. And then what I've started to notice as I was speaking to people is payment dates. And I talk about this in episode 17. What do your payment dates reveal about you? And I'm not going to give it away because it'll be interesting for you to listen to that. But your payment dates can say a lot about your relationship with money. And then just to lift us out of this, because I don't want us dwelling in the gloom, but I do want you to be aware of the traps that are out there. Episode 37 is going to talk you through, well, what are you waiting for then? By the end of this, if you like, this little listening exercise of these 4 episodes, I want you to understand the difference between conscious spending and unconscious spending. And again, I'm going to mention that Netflix documentary that I mentioned last week. It's called Buy Now. And when you start to see how you're being manipulated in the background with this greater awareness, you're going to be in a position where you're going to be more in control of your money. I suppose there's a balance, if you like, there's a saying, watching the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. So it's a balance between nitpicking and focusing on every little penny, and then generally developing a system where you can manage your money, minimize waste, and therefore maximize the return on your time spent generating income. And just to finish off this again, it's not about being stingy or greedy. It's about balance. It's about awareness. It's about consciousness about the money. It's not walking blindly down a path that someone stuck you on years ago if you're not happy there. Now, if you're happy, none of this is about give up a job. Absolutely not. I do not think a job is just over broke. If the job is just over broke, then get a better job. A job is not keeping you just over broke. It's your spending habits that are keeping you just over broke. Okay, so let's move on to money maths, this 3rd concept that I want to share with you. And this is really, I hope, going to be a very empowering section. I want you to be able to cope both emotionally with money and practically with money and move towards recognizing this as a tool that, as I've said, can be leveraged, can be made to work harder for you. And I don't mean just, this isn't banging on. You'll notice I haven't really mentioned, did I do it last week? I mentioned property investing once last week. And I'm only mentioning it now to say that I'm not mentioning it. So this isn't about, oh, yes, you've got to save up your money because Vicky wants to flog your houses or get you on a property course. That's not what this is. You can leverage your money in plenty of ways. By not spending it here, you could put it over there and it could be in a savings account. By not buying this thing and by buying that thing, you could save yourself £1 a week. And £1 a week is £52 a year. If you do that on several areas of your life, that can make a big difference. Maybe that pound that you save is actually £10 or £100. We were looking at insurance quotes recently, £800. And Bob's now got it to a position where it's, I think, £380. That does take time to do it. But it also, before it takes time, takes an awareness that money is a tool. And that if I'm going to give this to somebody else, I want it to work hard there. Well, how is that £800 insurance going to give me twice the value of the £400 insurance? Bearing in mind, we never want to claim on insurance anyway. You don't, do you? That's obviously worst case. But really understanding that your money needs to work for itself. It needs to work in the best possible way because you worked to get it in the first place. And I think, this is my belief again, obviously, it's my podcast and I'm the one speaking, but real happiness comes from having a degree of control over your financial life. If you feel that you're out of control with your finances, I can't imagine how you can't feel stressed. And I know that comes from my background and writing down every 10p that I spent because I was so worried I couldn't feed my children, that I prioritized the food, that I budgeted, I had a set amount of money every day, that I worked intensely with my money. And unless you're going to live off the grid, grow your own food, you're going to be part of a system where money holds the power. And so real happiness and real stress-free living, because let's be honest, living off the grid isn't going to be stress-free. It's very definitely going to be hard work. Real happiness, real stress-free living can be ours when we have some control over our money, over our lives. There's a big word going around at the moment, autonomy, that ability to choose. And even though we're in a very controlled and curated system where a lot of the things in our lives are already predetermined, we can choose how we live within that box. You can get right up to the edge. You can get slightly over the edge in some places without breaking the rules, by making your money work harder for you, by living the life that you want. Life says that we have to have a job that works Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That's not my life. Doesn't have to be your life if you don't want it to be. However, if you are comforted by having that structure, don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong to do it, but still make sure that your money is working harder than it probably is right now, that you then have the chance and the choice to make the decisions that you want when you're not at work. Money maths is the foundation, really, for replacing your income stream and ultimately achieving financial freedom. So if you love work and you love that degree of structure, what about thinking in 5 years that you might only work a 4-day week and you might have 3 days a week off? If you start using money maths now and leveraging your money now, you could effectively buy yourself out of that job. You could have a plan where for the next 5 years, every 5th year, you work 1 day a week less because you've got the income from another source, whatever that chooses to be for you, that buys you out of work. And obviously you'll have to work with your employer to do this, or you could be buying yourself out of your own business. And you're effectively easing yourself into an early retirement, but not the sort of retirement where you're so old and so tired that all you can do is sit in a chair, and drink mugs of tea and dunk your biscuits. You're young enough with this early retirement to go out and do whatever you want in your life. So let's start with episode 11. And that's where I introduced the wealth tracker. It's one of the resources, as I've said to you, in the Wealthy Life community, and the link will be at the bottom of the show notes. And this is to help you start shifting your financial mindset. And then I encourage you to go on and listen to episode 16. And this is where I start to outline the 5 simple steps that you can use to prepare yourself for change, no matter what else is going on in the world. Because at the end of it, as I said, we are in a very controlled and very curated system. Your way to ensure your own safety and security is to know that you have in place the steps that you need to protect you and your family financially. And when you reach that point where you lose your emotional attachment to money and see it for the tool that it really is, then you're ready for whooshionomics, that point where you're in control of your money and you're creating the life that you want. And so there's one more episode in this section that I want you to have a look at, episode 135. And it is about, is your money working hard enough for you? And I think that this is probably really a university master's level understanding of money, in that I want you to understand inflation and interest. These are 2 really powerful concepts that once you've detached yourself from the emotion about money and you understand it as a tool, you really need to understand how inflation eats your money and how interest grows your money, because that's how you get to keep what you've worked so hard for and how you get to build on it and take it forward into the future so it's there supporting you for the rest of your life. So you'll probably have noticed that in the past, I've always apologized when I've talked about maths. And I do that because I understand some people find it very stressful. I haven't done that once today. And that's because understanding money is essential. And in order to understand money, you have to understand some of the maths. And I know that you'll have listened to last week's episode about controlling that little voice and those negative messages that are coming in. As you were listening to this podcast, did you hear little voices creeping in? Are you stronger now because you were able to calm them down? I know that you're getting stronger. And I know that maths is going to be able to help you answer some of the most important questions. Is something of value to you? Is it good value? Should you buy this or should you buy that? Do you have enough? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Do you have enough? And is your money working with you or against you? Please say it's working with you. And if it's not, make it. And then I suppose the what if? What happens next? That's quite an important question to ask of your money. It isn't scary. Maths is empowering because it is here we go with glasses again. It's always the same metaphor, isn't it? But maths is the set of glasses through which you can see money for what it is. And you can take that first step today by reframing your relationship with money to avoid those traps I mentioned and to start thinking for yourself. So before I wrap up completely, I want to just reflect back on what I think are the most valuable lessons from this podcast episode. Whether you're feeling stuck in a cycle of financial stress, whether you're looking to build your confidence around money, or you're simply searching for a better way to balance wealth and happiness, let me take you through some of the principles that I've just been speaking to you about for the last half an hour or so. And remember, it's just numbers. It's not just cutting back. It's about shifting your mindset and taking control so that money works for you. It helps you create financial resilience and a peace of mind, and ultimately a life that feels abundant. So let's look at 3 insights that I think that you can take away from this podcast that are going to add some whoosh into your life. The first one I spoke about was understanding enough. It's that shift in your mindset to recognize that you already have enough. This is a really simple but profound perspective that actually eliminates the gap, the scarcity thinking. It paves the way for gratitude that we spoke about so much last week. It's clarity, and it helps you see the purpose of all of your financial decisions. This foundation understanding that you have enough can then be the bridge on which you start to build more than enough, or even much more than enough, in a very sustainable and stress-free way. The other thing I spoke about was ambushes, the financial ambushes that are out there. Watch out for that unconscious consumerism, those traps that the marketeers are out there laying to separate you from your money that you've worked so hard for. Avoid needless debt, needless debt, bad debt, I often call it. Just avoid it. You don't need to get yourself into debt. There is a way to make choices and to manage those spending triggers. And it might be difficult to start with, but you can turn it around. And I really believe that you can. You can start to embrace conscious thinking about money and conscious spending and regain control over your money. And goodness me, when you do that, and I can feel the goosebumps, because this is taking me back to that first couple of years when I was on my own. To know that you're in control of your money and that you can provide for your family. And no, it won't mean luxury holidays and things like that. It'll mean bringing in the edges. It mean not, we've just spoken about Christmas. It's probably too late. All the presents for the children at Christmas and birthdays. But it's so powerful once you achieve it. It absolutely is. And the last concept I brought to you, mastering money maths. Thinking about the stuff that school didn't teach you. And now you have the opportunity to learn, if you like, the fundamental truths about money, to understand the cost of debt, to understand how leveraging interest can make your money grow, to calculate the value of any purchase that you want to make going forward. You can view money as a tool rather than it being an emotional burden on you. And you can therefore, if you see it as a tool, unlock its potential so that it can work for you. And remember, above all, your financial resilience is your superpower. You can use these insights to take control and think independently, and then design that wealthy life that's full of a bit more whoosh for you. So I want to thank you very much for listening. And as always, please subscribe, please leave a review, and maybe share this with someone in your family that would benefit from it. If you're listening to it, maybe share these last 2 episodes with your partner. Have you got teenage children? What about sharing these episodes with your teenage children? Or a friend who's maybe struggling in a way that you aren't struggling, that you could point them in the direction of this podcast. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Vicky Boucher. So thank you for listening to another episode of A Wealthy Life. In fact, the last episode of 2024, episode 148. Wow, I can't believe that I have created that many episodes, or that you're listening to that many episodes. I want to remind you that building a wealthy life isn't just about pounds, dollars, euros. It's about having the mindset and the tools and the confidence to live life on your own terms. Whether you're going to define what enough means for you, whether you're going to start spotting and sidestepping the ambushes that are out there to drain your money from your pockets, or whether you're going to go that whole extra step and really master money maths and make your money work harder for you, you are already on the path to true financial resilience and empowerment. You have the power to reshape your life, to start with small intentional steps. And those steps start today. Reflect on what resonates with you over this episode. Go back and pick up on those episodes that I highlighted, so the other podcasts that you can go and listen to. Think about what's one action that you could take right now to begin steering your financial future in a direction that aligns more closely with the values and the goals and the dreams we spoke about last week. It's a journey. It's a journey. We're at the end of 1 year. We've got all of next year to be working on this. Maybe you'll work on this for the rest of your life. There's no rush. There's no perfect roadmap or one roadmap. It will be a different map for all of you, because you'll all have slightly different destinations. And even if you and I had exactly the same different destinations, our starting points would be different. Our resources along the way would be different. And the mindset that we come into the journey with will be different. The one thing that we all need is the commitment to keep learning, to keep growing, and to keep taking back control. You work so hard for your money. You spend time away from your family and doing the things that you would do if only we turned life on its head and you were allowed to have your happy calendar where you planned out all your happiness and just fit work around it. You're working towards that. But at the moment, while you're still trying to take back control, I did say try, while you're still taking back control, this is the journey that you are on. And I'm so excited for what's ahead of you. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your stories, how you're implementing these ideas into your own life. If you'd like to share them, we're going to start looking at capturing some of these stories in the Wealthy Life community by doing, if you like, member spotlights. So if you've got a story about how you've changed your thinking or you've revised your finances, or you're more confident that you're on the path to a wealthy life, then share those with me and we'll share those within the community. It would be lovely to have a conversation with you. And again, please, if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe and leave a review. Those are so important to the whole game of the podcast software, that it highlights it for other people. Leave your feedback. It really helps the podcast reach more people who could do with creating more wealth in their lives and having a little bit more wish. And of course, please work your way through the episodes that I've mentioned today for a deeper dive into these concepts. So until next year, can you believe that? Well, that's next week, actually. So until next year and next week, stay curious, stay resilient, keep building the wealthy life you deserve, because I know you've got this.